This is Paul Ellis, Managing Director of Ellis Wealth Management, where we encourage you to invest in what you love. Ellis Wealth Management is an independent financial services firm focused on planning, advice, coaching, and investment management. We are dedicated to the families we serve, and we encourage you to invest in what you love.
From Bellingham to Vancouver, Tina Over is Washington's West Coast realty specialist. When it comes to selling your old home, purchasing your forever home, or making sound investment property decisions, call 425-343-2410 to put Tina's extensive regional knowledge and top-notch team to work for you and your family.
Good evening and welcome to the Lynnwood Times candidate interview with Mukilteo City Council candidate for Position 3, Alex Crocco. Your opponent was not able to make today's interview. I am your host, Lynnwood Times reporter Bo Brusco, and I am joined by Lynnwood Times publisher Mario Lotmore behind the camera. So we're going to read just a quick bio about Alex, and then we'll get started in the questions. So his professional experience, he has 30 years of leadership experience in manufacturing and operations management, leading and advising cross-functional teams to improve results in safety, quality, schedule, and cost. 10 years of service in the Army Reserves and National Guard. His education, he has a Bachelor's of Economics from Rutgers University, a Master's of Business Administration from the University of British Columbia. For community service, Alex served 4 years on the Bishop's Committee at St. Hilda, St. Patrick Episcopal Church. He has been involved with fundraising efforts for the Japanese Gulch. He donates to Doctors Without Borders, the Mukilteo Food Bank, and Kamiak Performing Arts. Excellent. Well, thank you for your service, by the way. So our first question here is pretty simple, just good to get to know you. So all legislative and policy-making powers are vested in the City Council. What inspired you to run for office, and if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities?
I'm at a point in my career where I can take a step back and think about service to the community, and I think serving on the Mukilteo City Council would be a great way to do it. I love Mukilteo. I moved here 11 years ago, and when my wife Ann and I looked for a place to raise our daughters, we looked around the community. I knew I was going to work at Boeing, and we looked around the community, and we wanted a place that would be great to raise our kids. And Mukilteo came up as the winner. So we looked around. And the combination of the parks and the waterfront and the school system, that was a winner for us. So we could have lived in a lot of places, and we chose Mukilteo. So my first priority would be working on the comprehensive comprehensive plan. I think the discussions, the heated discussions this past year, I think can be traced back to a disagreement about the comprehensive plan for the town. I think that I want to use my skills and abilities to help develop a shared consensus about what we want to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I think that we can start by what we love about Mukilteo, and I think that we can come to some agreement about that, about what are the things that make Mukilteo great. I think the school system is at the top of the list. It's not directly under the control of City Council, but I think City Council, the decisions that City Council makes, have an impact on the school system, and I want to be on the City Council to make decisions with an eye on how it impacts the school system. My wife's a teacher. She teaches at Olympic View. She's taught there for 5 years, volunteered there before, and when Ann and I talk about Mukilteo, we talk about the school system and we talk about what's good for the kids. And I'm eager to lend my hand in that. So I think comprehensive plan is one. How the city council works with the school system is number two, and I think zoning decisions would be number three, and if I had a number four, it would be sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very cool. What improvements, if any, would you like to see in land use and zoning?
So I think there's a couple of different neighborhoods in Mukilteo, and they each have different characteristics, things that make them great, reasons why people live there. And I think we want to look at that, and I think our goal should be to preserve those things. I think the discussion about Old Town. Old Town is a historic area, and being in Old Town, you want access to the beach, and you want walking access around the town, and you want the development of the waterfront should support that. It should be a walking area where people can come down and spend morning, afternoon, and evening near the water, enjoy the water, enjoy friends, and meet people. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and talking about the waterfront, I understand there's businesses there, and we both know businesses have been through a lot, especially with the pandemic. So what do you feel are the top concerns facing small business owners in Mukilteo, and what would you do to address those concerns?
I think currently there isn't a lot of room for small businesses in down near the waterfront, and I think that's something that we should look at as we develop a plan for the waterfront. There's a couple of different stakeholders down there. There's the town of Mukilteo, there's the tribe, and the Port of Everett. I'm eager to work through all of those groups so that we can develop a shared vision of that waterfront that builds and supports each other.
Sure.
I think that would be a winner.
Well, and then outside of the waterfront, just small businesses more inland. What do you think the biggest problems they're facing are right now, and how would you help them out?
So that's a difficult one. I think that the biggest problem facing small business right now is employees. Employees coming back to work. I had read the median salary for an employee in Mukilteo is something like $40,000, and finding affordable housing within commuting distance for that you can cover with a salary like that, I think that's a huge challenge. I don't pretend that I have any easy answers, and I think that's something that I'm looking at and concerned about. When I hear small businesses talk, it's getting employees. It's a tight labor market. I think that's great in a lot of ways. I think it makes it tough on small businesses.
Excellent. So I'll give you just kind of like a more fun, hypothetical, creative question for you. So let's say if you were given a $500,000 grant to use in Mukilteo as a city council member, how would you allocate it in the best interest of the residents?
Sidewalks. I think the current budget proposal, if I remember correctly, between all the between sidewalks and crosswalks and ADA access, it's about $225,000 in the budget. I think with $500,000, using that to develop plans that we could then go to the state and have the state multiply that money to go to sidewalks. I think that the ability for kids to walk to school, if they're within walking distance, to walk to school on safe sidewalks is very important. I think of my kids. There is not a sidewalk to their local school. They have to travel along roads where there's no sidewalk, winding roads, hills. It's not especially safe. And the burden that puts on families to drive kids back and forth from school, I think that's a follow-on effect to that. So when I think about the things that would make Mukilteo a better place to raise families, would be for kids to be able to walk to school. And I would use that money to focus on that specifically.
Okay, excellent. Well, so you talked about your kids, but I'm going to ask you a question now regarding the older generation. So excluding changing housing and zoning codes, what would you propose to make Mukilteo a better place for seniors?
So Dodie Carlson, she and I became close because of this race. And she's talked to me about some of the things that her senior group is looking for. I think a place for them to meet on a daily basis, I think that would be great. I look at I think about my parents, and I think about how they wanted to be more involved in the community when they, as they grew older. And I think about what can city council do to make it easier for retired people to be more involved in the community, to lend their skills, their experience to build the community. I think there are a number of activities in the community that go looking for that type of leadership and go looking for that type of help. And I think about people like Dodie and how she's eager to pitch in, and I want to work with her on that. So
excellent.
Sarah Noet knows that buyers and sellers need to be agile in this fast-paced real estate market. That's why Sarah listens to her clients' needs and uses her extensive real estate knowledge to help them close a deal. Thinking of buying or selling? Then call Sarah Noet and her team at 425-516-1459 and get ready to move.
Well, here's another question for you that the purpose of this question is we're just trying to figure out, give voters insight into your decision making or priorities, how you go about going through that process. So if there is ever a budget shortfall or a recession, what recommendations would you present on how to mitigate that shortfall?
I look at our revenue sources, and I think about the ones that City Council controls, and I think about the sales tax, the real estate tax, and the utilities tax, and I think our reliance on sales tax is a weak spot for us when we're budgeting, because I think that can fluctuate. During COVID, revenues from that sales tax actually came in high. I'm not sure if I understand the ins and outs of that. I'm eager to dig into that to find out what the dynamic was there. Mm-hmm. But I think that in a downturn, I think the things that we would have to look at would be projects, projects that we could put off would be the place that I would look. I think police and fire are really important. Government services, especially in a downturn, would be important. And so I would look at purchases of vehicles. I would look at public works projects that we could put off. I think those are the things that you could tighten your belt on.
Thank you. Well, so speaking of the police, I do have kind of a long-winded question coming up for you, so if you need me to repeat myself or reread anything, let me know, because it has some context to it. But earlier this year, the Washington State Legislature passed a series of police reform laws regarding use of force. Overwhelmingly, law enforcement officers throughout the state argued that these new laws inhibit them from catching criminals and keeping communities and themselves safe. Would you support a resolution requesting the governor, the Washington State Legislature, and the Attorney General to assist in providing clarification of these new law enforcement standards and requirements?
Yes. I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for clarification.
Perfect. So regarding public safety then, just public safety in general, what do you think that the city is doing right now, and where do you think there could be room or opportunity for improvement?
So I was looking at some stats about Mukilteo crime, and I saw that over the past 20 years there's been a downturn in crime. I feel very safe in Mukilteo. So I don't consider I don't consider that. I think the police do a great job, and I think there's a good relationship between the police and the citizens of Mukilteo. I don't consider that part of it to be an issue. I think we have a good police force here.
Absolutely. Well, do you think there's room for improvement anywhere regarding general public safety in Mukilteo?
Room for improvement. I would go back to sidewalks. I think.
Yeah.
I think walking. When I consider my safety, my kids' safety in Mukilteo, I think about pedestrians and vehicles. That's where I think.
No, absolutely. I'm glad that you have a solid motif going throughout your questions.
Yep.
So this has been a big topic of debate and discussion over the last year and a half. So we do want to ask you just generally, what is your stance on defunding the police?
I'm not for defunding the police. I think that was I think that's gotten twisted up, to be honest. I do think that there are other options to deal with problems, and I think we should be funding those. Again, I think when you think about all the ways that people interact with different forms of government, I think about my wife and the children that she teaches, and how she's often she's in a position where she can see problems with the children that she's working with, and I think about the options that between the city, the county, the state, and federal government have to help people who are in trouble, and I think the police are one option, but I think there's a lot of other options, and I think we should be looking at that. I don't think that we should be always reaching for the police when we have a problem.
Okay. Well, another kind of buzzword that's been floating around the last year and a half is equity. And a lot of people seem to have different interpretations or understanding of what that word means. And so we just want to know, what does equity mean to you?
So I think the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, has laid bare the differences in resources that I'll go back to kids face. I'll go back to my wife. Last year, it was March of 2020 when the schools shut down. And at the time she had about 100 kids. And in those 100 kids, there were probably 80 that had the resources to pick up school. And if not pick up school directly, that they would be supported in school. So what I'm talking about their own bedroom or sharing a bedroom with just one other kid. I'm talking about having a computer at home, about having internet access, about having a quiet study space, about not being burdened with other tasks at home to keep a family afloat. The COVID pandemic was scary for us at first, my family, but pretty quickly we got into a pretty good space, while my wife was taxed with trying to figure out how to teach school over Zoom and reach kids over Zoom. I think she took the worst of it, but I had a chance to work from home, and my kids were studying from home, and I could spend time with my kids. But there were children that she was teaching for whom their parents didn't have jobs where they could stay home and work from home, where they had to go, and younger siblings weren't going to school. So here was a kid trying to learn and take care of a younger sibling. And I don't know how they did that. And I don't think that's not their fault. So I think that equity for me means that we look at the community and say, what are the resources that people have available to them, and what do we need to do to pick up and cover those gaps so that they don't fall through the gaps. I think a bunch of people fell through the gaps this past year. I think if the pandemic, if you had money, chances are you came out of the pandemic with more money. If you didn't have money, chances are you came out of the pandemic stressed beyond belief. And I just see that the pandemic, we went in different directions. And I think that we'll come out of the pandemic, but I don't think we should forget that.
Don't forget that the pandemic kind of exposed the equity, the unequal distribution of equity kind of thing?
The differences. When you I should have answered the question more directly.
No problem.
When you say equity, what I think of is that we all have there's a base layer of things required to be successful in society.
Yeah.
To become a contributing member of society. And that's a broad definition, and I'm ready to talk for hours about that. But what does that require? What does that involve? I think that involves food. I think that involves shelter. I think that involves an education, safety. Those are the things. And I think government has, I don't think government should provide all of that, but I think government should be looking out and saying, how do we make sure people don't fall through the cracks?
Okay.
So,
excellent. Yeah, I just wanted that clarification.
Absolutely.
No, but I really appreciate the thoughtful response.
Yep.
Last question for you. Mukilteo is home to a lot of beautiful landscapes like the one behind us. It's also home to Japanese Gulch, wetlands, and parks. What would you propose to improve the city's green spaces?
So I grew up on the East Coast, and there are some great big parks on the East Coast, and a lot of them have volunteer groups that work in the parks to maintain trails. And I think that there are skills that are involved with that. When you use a park, when you use a trail, you encourage erosion. And you see that in some of the more well-used trails in Japanese Gulch. You know, after we bought Japanese Gulch, and I think that was a great move, after we bought Japanese Gulch, more people used Japanese Gulch. I moved close to Japanese Gulch. During the pandemic, I walked in Japanese Gulch every day. It was wonderful. And you can see the different uses of Japanese Gulch. And I think one of the things that we should be concerned about is how do we care for those trails. And I think that one of the things that we can do is turn to volunteer groups. I was a member of the Green Mountain Club in the East Coast and Adirondack Mountain Club. So we'd take care of sections of the Appalachian Trail or Harriman State Park and Bear Mountain State Park. Those were the ones that were close to me. Mm-hmm. And we would go in, and you can see that when you go up into the Cascades. You can see some of the trails where you see proper water bars, and you can see where they've put stonework in. Volunteers have put stonework in marked trails. And eventually what that does is allows the plants in the area to grow back up next to the trail, and you don't have these large wallows in the trail. So I think that would be one of the things that I would be looking to do.
Excellent.
Coverage is important. Call Mike Dixon to find out what coverage is best for you, and pretty soon you'll be Stixin' with Dixon. That's Mike Dixon with Farmers Insurance in Old Town Mukilteo. Call 425-375-0860 today because coverage counts.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, for talking with the Lynnwood Times today. We do want to give you an opportunity to offer a closing statement, so whatever you want to tell the voters, you can go ahead and share it.
I've come to a point in my career where I have the time and inclination to volunteer in the community, and I think that being part of City Council would be a great way for me to apply my skills and experience to help the city that I love. Thank you.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Thank you.